Good evening, everyone, and welcome again to the Butterfly and Bee Awareness Week 2022. Today is the second of the 5 expert talks being organized as part of the Awareness Week for this year. This is an annual program, and this is the 6th year. The recordings of the online expert talks of the previous 2 years are available on the YouTube channel of the Bangalore Butterfly Club. Yesterday, we had a talk by Deepak Nayak on the butterflies of Dakshina Kannada, and if you've happened to have missed it, the recording will be available shortly on the Bangalore Butterfly Club YouTube channel for your viewing and revisiting. The speaker for today's expert talk is Manidip Mandal. Manidip is a naturalist by passion and a researcher and photographer by profession. He started observing butterflies around 9 years ago with the Bangalore Butterfly Club. His interests lie in research and understanding of how various plant chemicals impact insect behavior and development, and he believes that the research outcomes have great potential for sustainable agricultural practices. He is presently studying how host plant selection has evolved in grass-feeding butterflies. Today, Manidip will be talking to us about a small part of his research work, which is the egg-laying strategies in butterflies. Before he starts, we request the viewers to please keep yourself muted and keep your videos off. If you have any questions, you can post them in the chat and the speaker can address them at the end of the talk. So now let us move on to hear from Manidip about the egg-laying strategies in butterflies. Over to you, Manidip.
Thank you so much, Priya, for that wonderful introduction. It is always a pleasure to talk about science, communicate science in general to folks, and I am always happy to share things about my findings in the research work that I have been doing for the past couple of years. So yeah, I'll just get started with my presentation. So, hello everyone. My name is Manidip. I am a naturalist and a researcher, and I study butterflies. And for today, I'll be talking about a part of my research work on butterflies and moths, more specifically about the chemical ecology of the interactions that take place between butterflies and plants, moths and plants in general. So today I'll be talking about egg-laying strategies in butterflies. The outline of my talk today will be that I'll introduce about butterflies and its life cycle. Then I'll talk a bit about the development and anatomy of the butterfly egg. And then I'll talk a bit about how can butterflies locate host plants in a vegetation. And then in the next part, I'll be talking a bit about my research work that I did with moths in National Bureau of Agriculture Insect Resources, where I'll be talking about the host plant choice in moths and how it affects the survival and fecundity of this species. And finally, as a part to make the talk interesting, I'll be talking about a case study that was done from Sierra Nevada in California. The study was done by Michael C. Singer and Camille Parmesan. And I'll be presenting about their study in a form of like a journal club presentation. So this is the outline of my talk today. So let's get started. So butterflies are insects which belong to the order Lepidoptera, and Lepidoptera is a Greek word, is a word derived from Greek, where lepidos means scales and pteron means wings. So it basically translates to scaly wing insects. And butterflies are holometabolous insects, which means that they show complete metamorphosis. Butterflies are mostly diurnal. Which means that they are most active during the day. in comparison to moths, which are nocturnal. That is, they are more active during the night. And butterflies may have several generations in a year, or they may have a single generation in a year. Butterflies also have a lot of ecological roles that they play. So most of the butterfly species are pollinators, whereas some species are pests. For example, this Pieris brassicae is a pretty notorious pest on cruciferous plants like broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, etc. And butterflies have a lot of natural enemies. They have, why I'm saying natural enemies, because it includes the whole group of predators as well as the parasitoids. So butterflies have a lot of predators such as reptiles, birds, amphibians, etc. And they also have a lot of parasitoids like parasitoid wasps, then tachinid flies. And butterflies are also attacked by several fungi during the larval stage, which also affects them. So they do have a lot of natural enemies. And then some of the butterfly larvae eat soft-bodied insects. For example, ape fly larvae, they eat these mealy bugs. And some butterfly larvae also have mutualism with ants. For example, lycaenid butterflies larvae, they most of them show a mutual symbiotic relationship with ants. So coming to the life cycle of the butterfly, as I mentioned before, that butterflies are holometabolous insects, which means that they show complete metamorphosis. Basically, it means that the adult butterfly, female butterfly, lays an egg, and from the egg, a caterpillar or a larva hatches, and this larva feeds on the host plant, and and then it undergoes eclosion, where the larva grows in several instars, and then the larva undergoes eclosion and forms a pupa. So in this pupal stage, the larva completely undergoes the redevelopment of its structures, where it develops from a caterpillar-like body to an adult-like body. And then from the pupa, the adult, or the imago, which is an old term, emerges. And then the adults mate, and then the life cycle continues. So this is how a life cycle of a butterfly is. So now you may be asking, where do butterfly eggs come from? So we know that butterfly are oviparous insects, which means that they lay eggs, and the eggs develop in the ovaries of a butterfly. So in the female reproductive system of a butterfly, there are structures called as ovarioles. So this structure, which you see over here, this is called an ovariole, and this is where the egg development takes place. So in each ovariole, there are several oocytes, which is also known as a primordial egg in the different developmental stages. This basically means that the egg starts from the egg development starts from this region, which is called as the germinarium, and then it slowly grows in size. And there are follicle cells around which develop around the egg, which is known as the oocyte in that stage. These follicle cells have the nurse cells also, which help in depositing the yolk in the oocyte, and the yolk is what provides the nourishment, that is the proteins, carbohydrates, and other essential nutrients which is required for the oocyte to grow. So the yolk is deposited in the oocytes, and then the follicle cells secrete a substance known as a chorion, which becomes basically the outer layer of the egg, and then the follicle cells degenerate. And then after this takes place, the egg is now ready for ovulation. So in a butterfly, you might see these kind of ovarial structures when you dissect a female, and you would see that there are several eggs in the different developmental stages. So in this image over here, which is the ovary of the speckled wood butterfly, you can see it more clearly that there are several eggs in this ovary, where it is present in different developmental stages. So the egg usually matures like this. And then finally, when it has developed completely and become a mature oocyte, it goes into this region called as the oviduct. And over here, it is the place where the fertilization takes place. So I'll come to that in a bit. So the butterfly egg structures have a lot of shapes and come in a lot of shapes and sizes, and they are usually laid upright by the female onto the structure that the butterfly is laying its egg. And eggs often have different fine sculptures on them. For example, on this great orange tip egg, you can see that there are some kind of lines and structures on the egg, and each species have their own distinct sculptures on the eggs. So the outer shell of the egg is called the chorion, and it is usually hard ridged, and that helps in protecting the egg from its natural enemies. And the chorion also has a waxy coating on it. So this waxy coating basically prevents the egg from dehydration. It helps in retention of the water inside the eggs, or the cells will go dry, and the larva won't develop inside the egg. The eggs also have a tiny funnel-shaped opening on one of its end, which is called as a micropyle. And in this micropyle is basically the region. So suppose this is the egg. There will be a small hole on one end, which is called as the micropyle, and this micropyle is the region where the sperm will enter, and it will fertilize the egg. So after the eggs develop in the ovary, the next step is that the female would go and look for a mate, and then fertilize the egg. So when mating takes place, the males deposit a spermatophore during mating. So this whole structure that you see over here, this is the female reproductive tract. This is the ovaries, and each of these lines that you see over here are ovarioles. And there is a structure called as the bursa copulatrix. This is the region where the male deposits its spermatophore. And because it's such a huge structure, it takes several hours for the male to deposit this structure inside the female. And that is why when you see butterflies mating, they'll be stuck to each other. The male and the female will usually be stuck to each other for several hours. And this is the reason why it takes them so long, because this structure is so huge. It takes a lot of time and effort for the male to deposit this. And when the male deposits this spermatophore inside the male essentially loses a lot of its body weight as well. So the sperm is stored in the sperm sac, and it moves along the sperm duct, and it goes and gets deposited in this structure called as the spermatheca. So spermatheca is a part of the female reproductive system. And in the spermatheca, the sperms are usually stored for several weeks or several months also, until the female is ready to initiate the fertilization. So fertilization basically occurs before the egg is about to be laid. So when an egg is about to be laid, the egg travels from here in the common oviduct, and the egg orients itself in such a way that the micropyle faces the sperm duct over here. And then some contractions take place at the muscles over here, where and the sperms are released. The egg is also released. Fertilization occurs in this region, and then the female goes on to lay the egg. And the last stage is oviposition. So butterflies lay eggs upright on whichever substrate they're laying the eggs. And some species may lay single eggs, whereas some species may lay in clutches. And this depends on how the egg development is taking place in the ovarioles, in the ovarial structures that you just saw. And eggs are usually laid on a surface, for example, on the leaves by some species, and by stem by other species of butterflies. by some species of butterflies. And usually the butterfly lays the egg upright. So the base of the egg touches the substrate. That is, for example, if this is the leaf, the egg touches the substrate over here. And at the base of the egg, there are some viscous proteins present, which usually hardens and darkens when it comes in contact with the air. So this protein also helps in the firm attachment of the egg to the substrate. And the good thing about this protein is that it is water insoluble, which means that the protein doesn't dissolve in water. So it makes the egg stick firmly to the substrate, as well as when there is some kind of a heavy rain, the egg won't be washed away due to the force of the water, or the water generally being present around the egg. So let's come to how butterflies find host plants. So here, this is an image of a dynamic vegetation where you see a lot of trees and plants, and you must be asking, like, how can a crimson rose butterfly go and find its host plant in this kind of a complicated vegetation? So butterflies are faced by several challenges when they see this kind of a vegetation. They have to look for the appropriate host plant using different visual and chemical cues. And butterflies usually use three main cues, that is the visual cues. For example, leaf color, polarized light from the leaves, plant architecture, and leaf shape. Then they also use olfactory cues such as volatile chemicals released by the plants, which are carried by air currents. And finally, the gustatory cues, which are the innate plant chemicals which are present in the leaves or other plant surfaces. Today, I'll be talking mostly about visual cues, which is a part of my is a part of my research work, which I've been doing, and I'll also talk a bit about olfactory cues. So when we talk about visual cues, usually we talk about the color of the plant or the leaf that the butterfly would go and lay its egg on. So most of the color preference studies on butterflies, which have been done so far, have been mostly on its nectaring behavior or mostly feeding behavior. But when we talk about oviposition behavior, what are the different qualities that butterflies would look for in the leaf? So the leaf color gives information to the butterfly, such as the species identity. For example, if a tiger butterfly which lays its eggs on Calotropis, it has to identify the color of the Calotropis leaf, which is a bit of whitish peach in color. Whereas in comparison, say a common Mormon butterfly, which has to lay its egg on the curry leaf plant, it would look for a leaf which is green in color. And then the leaf color also gives information such as the nutritional content. So basically, this is something that I have hypothesized that when we look at crops like rice or wheat, we usually look at their nutritional content by looking at the nutritional color index chart, where we can see that if a color of the leaf is if a color of the leaf is like light green in color, it is probably it has probably low amount of nutrition. It is probably due to the nutritional deficiency in the soil. Whereas if the leaf color is a bit darker in green, it indicates that the plant is healthy because there is sufficient nutrition in the soil. So butterflies might also be able to recognize the nutritional content in the plant by looking at its color. And finally, leaf color is also a good indicator whether the leaf is healthy or diseased. And if a leaf is diseased, it may have a faded color or a yellowish color in comparison to green. And the leaf may also have spots. So butterflies may use such kind of information to look for good leaves and decide where to oviposit. So it has been shown that butterflies show innate preferences towards leaf colors that are associated with the host plants. And I have done some study on my own with common evening brown using artificial grasses to check if this butterfly indeed shows some color preferences. So in this experiment, I basically tested the females of common evening brown butterfly in a enclosed cage with artificial grasses of different color in a sort of a neutral background, checkerboard pattern background like this. And I did 4 tests to check for the preference of this butterfly in primary colors, and then check for the preference in different brightness of green. Then I tried to check with different saturations of green, and finally with different hues of green. So from my findings, from my study, I found that this butterfly prefers to lay eggs on green, obviously on primary colors. And then when it came to brightness of green, we saw that this butterfly prefers lighter green colors over darker green colors. And then when it comes to saturation of green, it prefers more saturated green colors. And when we look at hues of green, we saw that this butterfly prefers to lay eggs on greens that are slightly red, has slightly reddish hues in them. So yeah, this is the so finally we saw that this butterfly indeed shows some amount of color, has some color preference towards these colors that we saw from the different experiments that we did. Other factors that would also impact the butterfly's decision to lay its eggs are height of the leaf of the tree. This is because uh, when a butterfly chooses to, this is because when a butterfly has to lay its egg on a plant, if it chooses to lay eggs on the lower area of the plant where there is more humidity, there are chances that the egg may not dehydrate. So whereas some butterflies choose to lay eggs on the higher parts of the plant where there are more younger leaves available. So this is again a species-wise decision, but the height of the leaf on the tree matters a lot. Then the flatness of the leaf also. If the leaf is very flat or it has some ridges in them, then the green reflectance, also the brightness of the leaf, and then finally degree of polarization. So this is basically when sunlight falls on any surface, the light that gets reflected from it has a different degree of polarization in them, and this is also seen in when sunlight gets reflected from the leaves of a plant. So different features on the leaf of a plant can affect this. For example, hairs and trichomes, which are the tiny hair-like structures, they can impact the degree of polarization of the light of the sunlight falling on the leaf, and butterflies can pick up this degree of polarization, and it can find out whether a host plant is suitable for it or not. Then coming to the leaf shape preferences, there are some studies which have shown that heliconius butterflies use shape as a cue for feeding and oviposition, and it can also learn shape preferences for both flowers as well as leaves. And then coming to the chemical cues. So chemical cues are usually used by butterflies in long distance communication, and herbivores like butterflies and moths, they generally use plant volatile chemicals for locating host plants, and they do this by using the olfactory binding proteins, which are basically olfactory binding receptors that are present in their antenna. and these proteins are very sensitive to different chemicals that are released by the plants. So plants usually release these chemicals known as monoterpenes and sesquiterpenes. The structures of these compounds look something like this, but these compounds, they basically fit very well and strongly with the olfactory binding receptors present in the antenna of these butterflies. And because the binding is so strong, the plants don't need to release a very high quantity of these compounds to attract the pollinator. And since butterfly is a pollinator, it makes use of this of these compounds for finding a host plant. Now I will talk a bit about my work in NBAIR, where I studied host plant choices and how it of the moth Plutella xylostella and how it affects its survival and fecundity. So in this study, I studied how the life history or the life tables of this moth on different cruciferous plants such as broccoli, kohlrabi, cauliflower, and I also studied on some wild crucifers as well. So in this graphs over here, you can see that this is basically the survival rate and the age. That is the lifespan of the moth. So here, for example, we can just take the broccoli as an example. So the female lays the eggs, and it takes about 2 to 3 days for the eggs to hatch. And then in this part of the graph, we can see that the larva hatches, and then there are some mortality of the larva that we see because the graph goes down. And then the larva ecloses into a pupa. And then we also see that there are some pupal deaths, the adults emerge from these pupas. So this graph basically talks about the survival of this moth Plutella xylostella when it feeds on different host plants. So this is what I found from when by feeding the moth on 7 different host plants. And from this graph, we can see that the host plants have have a huge effect on have a considerable effect on the survival of the larva. For example, in cauliflower, we see that there is a huge there's a good amount of survival in cauliflower, whereas in kale, the survival of this species is considerably lesser. And there is also an effect on the longevity of the moth. That is when it feeds on plants such as kohlrabi or
Manidip,
cauliflower.
sorry,
Yes, sir.
there is a request to zoom into the graph. Is it possible?
There's a request for
Zoom into the graph. They are not able to
okay.
see the graph properly.
Okay, so I'll just try that. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay, so these are basically life table graphs, and they talk about the survival rate versus the lifespan of the species. So where I'll just continue from the longevity part. So we can see that in some when the moth feeds on certain plants, they have a shorter lifespan, whereas on some of the plants that they feed on, they have a longer lifespan. And this could probably be linked to the plant chemicals, to the innate plant chemicals such as the alkaloids and polyphenols that are present in the plant. And they do have a huge impact on the survival and growth and the development of the larva and the pupa, and this in turn also affects the adult. And when we come to the survivorship fecundity graphs, so survivorship is basically the survival rate of the of all the individuals, that is males and females together. But the interesting part is that we should look at the fecundity, that is the number of eggs laid by the female after it emerges. So here also we see that in some of the plants such as kohlrabi or in broccoli, we see a very high fecundity in the females. And in fact, they lay a lot of eggs right in the beginning of their adult life span. But when we come to some other uh, host plants that they have fed on, such as cauliflower or kale, the fecundity is considerably less. And this could also be linked to the innate plant chemicals, that is the alkaloids and polyphenols, which might affect the fecundity of the female as well. And this is also seen in the similar kind of results are also seen in the moth, which are feeding on wild cruciferous plants like cramby or lepidium or eruca. Now, these plants are basically wild crucifers, but they're eaten as salads in the temperate countries. So here also we see like each of these plants have some effect on the survival and as well as the fecundity in the individuals, as well as the population of the moth.
Yeah, you can go full screen, Manji.
Yeah. So why are oviposition decisions important? Firstly, eggs are vulnerable to natural enemies such as parasitoid wasps and small reptiles, birds, and also from grazing herbivores, which are unintentional. And and here you can see that when a butterfly lays its egg, the plant essentially recognizes that there is a herbivore which has laid its egg, and immediately it starts releasing these herbivory induced plant volatiles. They release these kind of green leaf volatiles which attract the natural enemies. So here we can see a picture of a parasitoid wasp parasitizing a common mormon egg. And butterflies also face challenges in temperate zones where winters are harsh. This is particularly important because the butterflies which are found in Europe and in Northern America and Canada, they have like particular seasons where there are harsh winters. So when the autumn season starts, the leaves start falling. So a butterfly which has mated and it wants to lay its egg at the end of summer cannot go and lay its egg on a leaf, but it has to lay its egg on a twig, so that the egg stays on the twig and instead of the leaf. The leaf will fall off by autumn. So there the butterfly needs to like lay its egg on the twig. And in tropical zones, there are several dry seasons. So the butterfly needs to make a important decision like where it has to lay its egg. Otherwise, the egg may undergo dehydration. So now we can quickly look at the case study from Sierra Nevada in California. This is a study which was done by Michael C. Singer and Camille Parmesan, who is also a Nobel laureate. So this paper is basically titled "Butterflies Embrace Maladaptation and Raise Fitness in a Colonizing Novel Host." And it basically talks about how anthropogenic changes in an environment impacts the behavior of the butterfly in general. So they studied this a butterfly called Euphytris editha, and the original host plant that it lays its egg on is called pedicularis, which is chemically well defended. That means that larva larva takes, that means that the larva will find a bit difficulty for it to evolve because there are strong chemicals in the plant which can defend it. And the new host plant, which came due to the anthropogenic changes, that is by logging, they are usually less defended and ephemeral. Ephemeral basically means that this plant is short-lived, so they die quickly. And less defended means that they have lesser amount of chemicals to protect itself. So the life history is such that this butterfly lays its egg, and within 2 weeks the larva emerges. The larva eats for around 2 to 4 weeks until the end of summer, and then the larva undergoes diapause for about 9 months and during the winter. And then the larva again comes out from the diapause and it feeds again. And then it pupates into the adult. So originally, in this uh, this butterfly, which they were studying in an area called as the rabbit meadow, there the butterflies fed on the plant called pedicularis, um, on pedicularis. But after logging took place, the Collinsia became more abundant in those areas. But the butterfly also has populations in these different regions. Like in Tamarack, this butterfly fed on Collinsia predominantly. And then, for example, in this Franklin Point, they fed on pedicularis, whereas in Sonora, they fed on a different plant called Castilleja. So these are all different meta populations, or like a whole population of butterflies in these different areas where they have locally adapted to feed on the host plants which are present over there. So in Rabbit Meadow, this butterfly you mostly fed on this plant called Pedicularis. So what happened in Rabbit Meadow is that this butterfly used to lay eggs on Pedicularis plant, but in 1967 to 70s, the humans came there and they started logging, and they also made logging fires, and this killed off the Pedicularis. And the fires that emerged from burning all these logs killed off the pedicularis, and the Collinsia took over in that area, and it also extended the lifespan of the Collinsia. So what happened is that by natural selection, the butterfly started preferring Collinsia, and they colonized on this Collinsia in that Rabbit Meadow area by mid-80s. So in the 80s, the survival became higher in Collinsia, in the cleared patches, that is the patches where the logging took place, than the pedicularis in the unlogged patches. And then throughout the years, the growth and adult density became higher in the clearings than in the patches that were unlocked, that is the intact patches. And then all the unlocked patches, they started acting as pseudosync. So to explain this term, you have to see there is a thing called as a sink and a source. So source is an area which provides the population, and from the source, most of the populations move towards another area where there is a lower amount of population. That is called as a sink. So what happened in the pseudo sink is that in this unlocked patches, which were previously the sources of this butterfly population, there the population became less. So the population from all these cleared patches where the Collinsia was there the butterfly population was more now suddenly. So the balls had changed, and from the cleared patches, the butterfly started moving towards the unlocked or the intact patches. So this unlocked patch started acting as a pseudo sink or a false sink. So basically, you can see that larva and Collinsia and clearing. So this areas and all started acting as the sources, and larva and pedicularis in undisturbed habitats. All these yellow patches over here, they started acting as a pseudo sink. So what happened essentially was that when Collinsia took over these clearing patches, the butterfly started feeding on preferring this Collinsia instead of pedicularis, but this created a huge problem for the butterflies. Basically, maladaptation took place. So maladaptation can be said that can be defined as a species which is not adapted to an environment which harms its survival capabilities. So there was a strong alighting bias in Collinsia, where because this pedicularis plant has this kind of an appearance, all the butterflies initially knew that their host plants look like this, and so they started preferring to lay eggs on the host plants which looked similar to pedicularis. So there was a alighting bias on this plant called Keenactis, which is a different species, but it looks very similar to pedicularis. So there was some kind of an alighting bias which made this issue. But when the butterflies came and sat on this Keenactis plant, they tasted the plant and they did not lay any eggs on it. And then there was also a post-alighting preference for senescent over blooming Collinsia. So what happened in Rabbit Meadow, where the logging took place, was that the butterflies started preferring to lay its egg on the Collinsia which were about to die. In comparison to the Tamarack area, where the butterflies originally laid eggs on Collinsia, like they were adapted to lay eggs on Collinsia. They used to lay the eggs when the plant was still in the budding stage. Remember that here the butterflies are adapted to lay eggs on Collinsia, but in the Rabbit Meadow where the logging had taken place, they were all laying its eggs on the senescing, that is the about to die host plants. So this made it difficult for the larva to find the food, because all the plants were dying and the larva did not find the food, and there was also a high amount of mortality because of this. And then finally, there was a positive geotaxis exposed the larva to low quality food. So when you saw the structure of this pedicularis and Collinsia, you might have seen that this plant is kind of prostrate in nature. The leaves grow closer to the soil, but in Collinsia, all the leaves grow away from the soil. That is, the fresher leaves are found at the top of at the top region, which are very higher from the soil. So what happened was that the butterflies in this Rabbit Meadow, they were originally adapted to lay its eggs on pedicularis, which were closer to the ground. So it was laying eggs at around 0.5 centimeter above the ground. And what had happened in this area was that the butterflies continued to like repeat that behavior. When Collinsia took over that area, they continued to lay eggs like 0.5 centimeter from the ground in Collinsia as well. But as you saw that the plant has more fresher leaves at the top than at the bottom. So most of the larvae which were coming out from coming out from this area of the plant, like they were emerging, they couldn't find more nutritious leaves at the top of the plant, and in turn all these larvae ended up dying. And then finally, the clutch size in the Collinsia in this Rabbit Meadow was also larger than optimal. This is because in Rabbit Meadow, the butterflies were this butterfly was adapted to lay its egg on pedicularis, and they usually laid larger clutches, about 39 to 52. What had happened was that in Collinsia, smaller clutches usually survive better. But because these butterflies were still adapted to pedicularis, they were continuing to lay a high amount of eggs on the Collinsia, and this created a huge competition for the larva, and insufficient food was available, and this caused the high mortality in the larva again. So long story short, Collinsia was rapidly colonized and preference for it evolved. But the insects that were feeding on it retained adaptations to the pedicularis, that is to the plant which was originally there, in several traits. And what had happened was that evolution was increasing, evolution of increasing acceptance for Colinsia was continuing until the end of 1989. And then what happened after 1989 was there was an adverse climate catastrophe. This affected the Colinsia population. And finally, due to all these catastrophes that took place, the butterfly lost its evolution that was increasing towards this Colinsia. And then finally in 2001, there was no natural oviposition observed on Colinsia. The butterflies had again gone back to laying its eggs on pedicularis. So this is a story about how climate change and man-made changes can impact vegetation and in turn the butterfly behavior, which affects its population ultimately. So thank you. And I want to thank Bangalore Butterfly Club for like motivating me for so many years and allowing me to learn so many things and um, bringing me to this point where I'm able to talk about my research with all of you. I want to thank my research advisors, Professor Friyak Molman, Ullasa, and Dr. Bhaktavatssalam, with whom I have worked on butterflies and moths. I also want to thank my undergraduate and postgraduate teachers from St. Joseph's College and Mysore University. I also want to thank my family and friends who supported me through this journey, and finally, Karnataka Forest Department for providing me this opportunity to share my knowledge with all of you. And you can reach out to me at my email or my WhatsApp number. It's provided here. You can also reach out to me on Instagram or LinkedIn or ResearchGate. Yeah. So that was my talk. Thank you so much for being patient and listening to me.
Thank you, Manidip, for being patient and telling us all these details of your research and your observations. It was a really very interesting session with so many things that I'm sure many of us learned for the first time. We have a few questions.
Yeah.
First question by Hanish KM. In some moths, we have observed that the female moths are laying fertile eggs without fertilization. How is it possible?
In some moths, we have observed that female moths laying fertile eggs without fertilization. How is it possible? I am not really sure about this because I haven't studied, I haven't come across this in any literature. But there could be some kind of chemicals that initiate the development of the egg without fertilization also. So these there might be some kind of proteins or hormones which actually initiate the egg to start dividing when the ovulation takes place. And essentially the moth, the female moth gets the signal to go and oviposit these eggs. I mean, the female of any organism might go and might get initiated to go and lay this egg. So this is called parthenogenesis, but I'm not sure if it's there in moths. I haven't read, but I'll be happy to know more about this if you can share the article or literature papers about it. It's very interesting question. Thank you so much.
And the second question is from Keshava. Does that mean butterflies prefer sunny day for identifying the host plant? Since you were talking about the reflecting of the light.
Sometimes, yes, but I am not sure about this again fully because we need to test for the butterfly oviposition rates between sunny days and cloudy days in that case. So that would be an interesting study to do as well. In my experience, I have seen that in Plutella xylostella, that moth that I worked with, it prefers to lay eggs when it is mostly cloudy. That is what I have observed. During the sunny days, they are not very active. They usually go and hide under the leaves of their host plants or whichever plant they find. So that is what I've observed in these moths.
So could it also be dependent on whether they're using more of the visual clues or the chemical clues, and accordingly sunny or cloudy day?
Like on it's not like that, because they would use the same amount of chemical cues on even if it is sunny or cloudy. Maybe on sunny days, the chemical cues may not be as strong as it is on the cloudy days, because there are if more humidity is present, there are more water molecules that can carry these chemicals more efficiently compared to drier days. Yeah.
Okay. The next question is from HN Shankar. As part of egg-laying strategy, would the moth referred in this case prefer a plant species on which survival chances are better when it has all possible host plants available?
So this moth species is a very generalist species. And what I have observed is that it really doesn't care about about the plant that it is going and laying its egg on. But there is a preference for plants mostly without much obstruction on its surface. For example, in my study, I checked for the egg-laying preference on plants which have more amount of hairs or trichomes, like mustard or Chinese cabbage. And what I observed was that the moths, they were not preferring to lay its eggs so much on these kind of plants where there were so much obstructions. It probably the females probably felt that it will be difficult for me to lay the eggs, and so it went and laid more eggs on plants which has a smooth surface. I mean, the leaves with the smoother surface, like broccoli or cauliflower. So I saw more oviposition on broccoli or cauliflower compared to plants which has more amount of these hairs on them. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. The next question from Keshav. Does laying of egg depend on the output, like dry season form, wet season form? If yes, why natural selection brings in these types of forms? And how does it give advantage to either survival or success rates of pupating?
Yeah, I'm not sure if oviposition. I don't know, like, if how oviposition would be related to that. I need to read up more about how oviposition rates are different in wet season form versus dry season form. But usually, the wet season forms of the dry season form usually has the doesn't have the eye spots, and it has like all these jagged patterns on its body, where the butterfly is more camouflaged in its habitat compared to the wet season form. So these forms might be more about like protecting the adult individual than oviposition. But in generally speaking, in the wet season forms where there is more when the butterflies have more access to humidity and then more better host plant quality in general, because there is moisture and there is sufficient water for the plants to grow. Maybe the egg laying rates will be higher in wet season forms, but it might not be dependent on the how the butterfly looks. Yeah.
Next question is from Swati. I have a question on the color preference, as the example given by you is only for the common evening bound, right? And she further asks, are there any correlation with the floral color and leaf color?
In my study, I didn't study the relation with floral color and leaf color. But in another study that was done with I think with monarch tigers, they found that generally the butterflies, the monarch butterflies, are more attracted towards floral colors that are purple in color, because they associate that color with a reward. And when it comes to the leaf color, they more or less choose the leaf color that is associated with egg laying. So they have like, even though like a monarch butterfly, a female butterfly is like looking for food as well as a plant to lay her eggs on. Like she has these different preferences that she uses according to her needs. So, are there any relation with the floral color and leaf color? No. But in common evening brown, there is a relation. There may be preferences for this specific color of the fermenting fruit or fermenting vegetable, which they prefer to feed on. I think there was a study done on that.
Okay. The next question, there are certain scenarios where we see that butterfly lay eggs on non-host plant, which is not its host plant. Is this some type of innate preference where they're trying to learn appropriate cues and finding a better host plant? Or it's just a behavioral bias that has accidentally laid egg on the wrong plant?
Again, this could be an innate preference. So there are some species which prefers to lay the eggs away from the host plant, and and the larva has to go and find a host plant. Not all butterflies lay their eggs on the host plant itself. Like I said, for some of the temperate zone butterflies in Europe and in North America and Canada, that the butterfly goes and lays her egg on a twig, which is not its host plant. So the butterfly so the larva, when it emerges, it has to go and find the leaves on its own. So this could be an innate preference again. But butterflies are also known to make a lot of mistakes. So I'm not sure. It depends on the context, on which species you're asking, and what is taking place.
The next question from Sheila Chabra. Don't butterflies usually lay eggs on new leaves of the host plants? They seem to lay eggs only when the fresh leaves appear. Why is this?
Some butterflies do prefer to lay eggs on the new leaves because because probably the larva of the larva of this butterfly develops quickly. So these butterflies might have evolved a trait to lay eggs on the newer leaves of the host plants. But in some cases, um, uh, it is again not seen that some of the butterfly species may also go and lay its egg on different leaves of the host plant, maybe on a twig or on the older leaves, and it lets the larva do the searching.
Or could it also be like something like a baby food we use, no? Something where the younger caterpillars need something softer to eat. Is that also relevant? And then as they grow older, they can chew on the more thicker and mature leaves.
Yeah. So that is again in the case of all the butterflies, the neonate larva, that is the larva which has just emerged from the egg. It really needs to find like the youngest leaves which are easiest to chew on. So, but again, the preference for the butterfly to lay her eggs on the younger leaf or the older leaf is again very species specific trait. Yeah.
Next question from Muthu Krishnan V. Why butterflies doing the pseudo oviposition and oviposition to non-host plants? I think it's similar to a previous question.
Yeah. So like I explained in that slide about this butterfly which was alighting on a host plant which looks similar to it. So what happens is that sometimes the butterfly might find a host plant, might find a plant which looks very similar to its host plant. So it goes and looks at it and it tries to alight. But then when it finds the taste of this plant to be different from its host plant, it will not oviposit on it. So pseudo oviposition is like the butterfly is trying to oviposit, but it does not really lay the egg over there. So this is in the case where the butterfly gets confused for a plant which might look similar or smell similar or taste similar to its host plant, but it's really not.
I have a question with respect to that. Like I've observed the red Pierrots when I had bryophyllum in my balcony, a lot of them used to come and lay eggs, and they have flown away as adults too.
Hmm.
But they always used to go and sit on the aloe vera plants. But
Okay.
the appearance or this thing is quite different also, right? So why even when
Hmm.
the bryophyllum was completely eaten up, I found them coming in most of the time, but they would sit on aloe. Any
Hmm.
particular explanation for that?
I am just guessing that this butterfly, this particular individual or the population might have gotten confused for the host plant, because yeah, as I said, that some of the plant species might smell similar, and aloe vera and bryophyllum and its host plant kalanchoe, they are in the similar family. No, not aloe vera, but I
Kalanchoe
think
and
kalanchoe
bryophyllum.
and bryophyllum are in the same family. So they do have like similar chemical consistency in them. So this might have been the case where that the butterfly might have gotten confused due to the chemicals.
Because I
But
found whenever they come, they always alight on the aloe vera quite, I mean, multiple times, but I have
right,
not found any eggs being laid.
right, okay, okay. I thought that these butterfly also laid the eggs. In that case, like I would have asked
No,
you
they
if
didn't.
they didn't. Okay.
But they always sit on them. I mean, without fail, whichever individual comes
Hmm.
in, each of red Pierrots come and sit on the aloe vera.
Okay, okay. Do
So
they
I
also
just,
like do that do they also try to like do that pseudo oviposition pose where they try
I
to
have
lay
not
the
been
eggs?
able to figure it out because they're pretty fast and they keep, quickly
Okay.
hopping off.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. The next question. Is it possible for the same butterfly to lay eggs on different host plants? Sheila Chabra.
Um, I don't think so. This is usually the case because in if we take for example common mormon, if the mormon butterfly lays its egg on say curry leaf plant, I've only seen them to lay its egg on the curry leaf plant only again. And Again, I'm not sure about this because it depends on the butterfly species. If it is a specialist butterfly, it might not lay eggs on a different host plant. By specialist, I mean that it is specialized on a particular group of family of plants. Um, and I don't think this is the case in if a butterfly is monophagous, that is, it feeds on only one particular species of plant. Unless if it is doing that, then it's probably a mistake that the butterfly has done. Otherwise, in generalist butterflies, generalist species, they do lay eggs on different host plants. So
Mormon would lay on the same Mormon would lay on both lime and curry leaf, or you would say that it's only on one.
I mean, I have only seen them lay eggs on curry leaf instead of lemon plant. Like, however, how many ever Mormons have visited in at my home. So my prediction would be that this particular butterfly prefers to lay its egg on only one host plant. But my assumption is coming from this notion that the larva which emerges and feeds on the curry leaf plant, it will not feed on the lemon plant. So my assumption is coming from
Uh,
there.
Actually, I have tried some of them when the plant got eaten up. I've switched them from curry leaf to lime, and they have eaten.
Okay, that's very interesting.
I have more than one caterpillar has done that.
Okay, okay, that is very interesting.
Because
Okay.
the plant got eaten up and some of them got infected, the leaves and all that. So,
Hmm.
and the caterpillars were healthy and they were growing, and I switched
Hmm.
them to lime plant, and they grew and eclosed also as adults.
Okay, okay, okay. Okay, that is really interesting because I
And
had a similar discussion with my advisors the other like a few months back about this, and they told that the butterflies might have some kind of a genetic there might be some genetic basis on why the larva cannot shift on a different host plant. So
But I have found them the same caterpillars, at least 3 of them. I have seen them switching between whatever was available.
Okay, okay.
And a common mormon and one lime also.
Okay.
So that I've seen. And another point I wanted to ask with respect to this, what you said about in the same balcony, lime plant and curry leaf plant. Could it also be that maybe if there was a healthier lime plant, they would have selected, and that particular lime has developed defenses because of which it's not selecting that plant?
Yeah, the
So
lime
that
plant
could
was
also
actually
be a
not in a good,
probability, I
yeah,
suppose.
yeah. The lime plant wasn't in a really good state, and it didn't have as much as healthier leaves compared to curry leaf.
Because I have found in my apartment, in my balcony, and the lime plant in the apartment and the curry leaf in the balcony, the butterfly has sat on both the lime plants in the apartment and the curry leaf plant in my balcony. So I'm not sure
Okay.
if they laid on the lower one, but they have. It was like what I saw from the balcony looked like it could be have been laying, the kind of
Yeah.
flight that it had.
Yeah. You can only conclude it after it lays an eggs and you can see the larva. But if it is just visiting the plant, then you can't conclude because a butterfly can visit a plant randomly. Yeah.
But I've definitely found the switchover. They do eat both.
That is really interesting. Yeah.
Okay. And the next question. Sorry, just a minute. I have seen plenty of common Jezebels at a patch near a forest area in 2019. But after that, I am not able to see one in the past 3 years. There were some forest clearance made for safe walkway. Should I consider their host plants are gone totally from that area? Would there be possibility of them lying somewhere close by? By Karthik VS.
So if the host plant are not present in that particular area, you also wouldn't find the butterfly over there. So I'm guessing that after they cleared that patch, the population might have died off, or they might have migrated to a different place. That is what my guess is.
Next, we have last 2 questions. Is it common where camouflage crowded leaves, irrespective of plant prefers? By location, is it common where camouflage crowded leaves, irrespective of plant? I suppose they are trying to ask whether camouflage crowded leaves are preferred more.
Camouflage crowded leaves. This is again a species specific trait. So some of the some butterflies like to roll up the leaves and then stay inside that, and then some of the the larva, sorry, and then some of the larva prefers to stay beneath the leaf surface to not get spotted by the by its enemies. So maybe some of the species might also show this behavior again.
Next question. You mentioned about maladaptation of these species by anthropogenic drivers, but I'm thinking if there were any other drivers as well, and could it be an ecological trap? From Manoj Kumar. That's the last question for the day.
In that study, there were no other drivers that drove the butterflies towards maladaptation. But in this case, if they wouldn't have adapted well to these new host plants, then it would have become a evolutionary trap, I suppose. I am not familiar with the term ecological trap, but evolutionary trap would be the case in that, where the butterflies are eventually dying because they just cannot adapt to the change.
Okay. Thank you, Manidip, for this wonderful talk. I mean, very, very interesting facts we learned, and so many new things. I'm sure all of us have been fascinated with the different aspects that you have shared with us. And thank you for answering all our questions. And thank you for being here with us.
The pleasure is all mine, Priya. Thank you so much for giving the opportunity to present about my work.
Thank you. And
Yeah.
viewers, before we sign off, please do join us for the remaining 3 talks. We still have talks right up to Friday at the same time every day. And the recordings of this year's sessions will also be shortly available on the YouTube channel of Bangalore Butterfly Club. The previous year's recordings are also available for you to visit and revisit. Thank you.